So here we go then, race number 4 of the second round robin stage of the Louis Vuitton America's Cup qualifiers. The opening race of the day, Japan with the vastly experienced Dean Barker at the helm, pitting his wits against Frank Camas in France. We've seen this pre-start decide plenty of races here in Bermuda already, Ken, haven't we?
Yeah. What is noticeable here so far is we saw the Japanese jibe and stayed up on their foils. We haven't seen Groupama jibe yet and stay on their foils. The stability, we'll notice up here in the upper left corner, there's our starting line right there. These guys are a little bit early coming back for the start, but remember, in light air, it's also much harder to accelerate. The French have an interesting spot. They can dip down below Dean Barker if they want to there, or they can just try to continue and gap off. But 15 seconds to go, they better get going. I think they're going to be late.
The Japanese and Dean Barker have made a fast start, something of their trademark, and again they are off to the better beginning as they hit the start line, and Groupama Team France taking something of a nosedive early on, allowing the Japanese to stretch away up on the foils and away on this first reach to the mark.
As we always say up here, it's very simple for us to criticize what looks obvious, but I'm guessing Frank Camas will not be happy at all with that start. They were kind of tame. It looked like they were going to try to take a running start, a running rip at the line, and they were just late and really late. And in your critical race so far in the series, the last thing you want to do is give your rival just an easy head start. And for Dean Barker, that was an easy head start.
French were edged out in comprehensive fashion by the USA as well, weren't they, in their last race in that pre-start. And as they hit the first mark, it is SoftBank Team Japan and Dean Barker who are in control of proceedings. Their issue, I guess, Ken, and we spoke about it a little bit before the race began, this notion of hanging on to the leads that they've built, because they've had a number of occasions in which they've been overhauled.
They had a nice comeback win after losing a start to Artemis, but look at the angle differences. This is going to be very different for all of us to watch, for all these boats to participate in, because we haven't really had this light of air. Of course, they have been testing over the last couple months, but they'd have new wingtips on, they'd have new setups, new configurations. They all have their Code 1 jibs on today, which are their larger jibs. And this is a telling moment for me. How stable is France? Because that really helps determine whether they're going to stay in this race or not.
The early indications are not terribly stable, but there is a long way to go. Plenty of time to iron out the creases.
25.
You see, when you put those hands in the water, how high or close to the wind you have to sail to try to get the boat up on the foils. Really long foils here today. Look at how long they almost come to the center line of the boat. Again, the longer the foil, the longer that foil is, the more it's made for light air, the more it's made to lift the boat rather than flat out boat speed through the water. Massive long foils, and already 150 meter, not just 150 meter lead, but they're one jibe ahead. If they can lay into this mark, if Japan can get into the leeward gate, this bottom gate number 2, without having to jibe again, they're going to have quite a substantial lead. Groupama, Joey, we were talking out there, Joey on the water, we were talking before, Groupama might have some new foils that you guys haven't seen before?
Yeah, that's right, Ken. Yesterday we saw a Groupama launch with a set of new light air foils, really long tips in them, getting towards sort of 2.5, 3 meters long. And that, I think today you're seeing them, they're actually going really well. They've had a really bad jibe, their first maneuver, they lost a lot. But in boat speed wise, I actually think their boat is going really well.
SoftBank Team Japan leading the way though at the leeward gate, gate 2, and heading upwind once more. And a little bit of a contrast in the way the Japanese are maneuvering. Very smooth, everything under control.
It seems a bit low octane though, doesn't it, compared to what we've been watching this past week. But the phenomenal part of it is that they're flying at all, really. It's actually incredible that they can get these things out of the water. It's only blowing 7 knots, and for sailors around the world, 7 knots is not exactly windy.
Well, these kind of conditions actually might not be the kind of conditions that Frank Camas will be too concerned about. He had some of his best results, didn't he, during the World Series in light air. They were pretty good in New York when the air was relentlessly fluky.
But they just, again, that stability. Look at how slow the boat goes coming out of attack when those hulls get in the water. Painfully slow, down to 7 or 8 knots. Japan isn't exactly popping out of the water and flying it. And at one stage, let's go back to Joey Newton for a second. At one stage, Joey, at what stage, I should say, do the hulls actually not come out of the water? Do you sail as a displacement boat rather than a foiling boat?
Well, it's around this wind speed, which is kind of what you're seeing. And the important thing to remember with these foiling boats is you have to invest some speed. You have to invest some of your distance to get the boat up on the foil. And that might mean heading away from the mark that you're heading to or you're trying to get to. So what you see Groupama doing right now, and you saw Japan do before, they just sail along in a displacement mode until they get a good puff of breeze and they say, okay guys, let's accelerate now. And they invest that speed to get up on the foil. Once you're on the foil, the boats start ripping along great, but you need to pay something to get them up there.
And Ali, and to add on to that, I think you need to be patient, you know, and you can't just push the bow down and try to get it all in one spot. You got to slowly build the way Dean Barker and the Japanese did after that tack.
Well, they are slowly building their lead, even if the speed is not something to take the breath away just at the moment.
70 metres. 3, 2, 1, here we go.
So you can just get a flavour of quite how tough it is in the breeze out there for these manoeuvres to happen at any kind of pace. They've slowed the Japanese to 5 knots.
Only blowing 7 knots out there right now, even lulls even less than that. So they're going to have to be super patient, a totally different type of sailing out there on a day like today. Patient, slow maneuvers. See, Dean Barker actually ran around the front of the wing to get across the boat there. He's trying to keep the weight out of the back of the boat as to drag the transoms in the water, the back end of the boat. So completely different setup. And, you know, you don't see the grinders huffing and puffing every second around the race course, although they still are certainly trying to pump that hydraulic fluid through the boat, but it's displacement sailing. You're just seeing Barker get out of the water there right now. He was very patient, as we were talking about, stayed on the wind in displacement mode and let it come to him rather than forcing the issue and sailing super wide and losing a lot of distance. The speed differences, Ali, out on the race course sometimes. Sometimes we have 10 knots of speed difference between boats at times. Here we have 4 or 5 knots. They're up on their foil, but not, they're flying, but I wouldn't say, they're flying literally, I wouldn't say figuratively flying.
Yep, the hulls are out of the water, but the speeds are not what we've been used to seeing across the opening few days here in Bermuda. But the America's Cup is all about being able to adapt, not just in boat design, but in tactics, and all those changes, all these wind shifts require an adaptable mind, an adaptable approach.
Even though the boats are going slower, we've come up on this next gate in kind of our normal time. These are like 18 to 20-minute races, and that's because Regatta Director Ian Murray has the capability of shortening the legs up quite small in order to have a pretty similar timed race course out there. I'll tell you, these guys look sharp.
Smartly rounds the gate for SoftBank Team Japan, and downwind. Just 2 race wins to the Japanese names. They've beaten the French in their previous race. They've beaten the British, but they've lost to the Swedes, the Kiwis, and the Americans. And that does not look particularly stable.
As a displacement tack, it may not be as far-fetched as you think, though. As long as they keep it on the breeze and let the boat build. Look at Dean Barker taking off at 22, 23 knots. What was only like a 400-meter lead, obviously is wildly accentuated by the fact that once the boat rounds that top gate, they're going 2 or 3 times the speed downwind again. So it's kind of a bit of a yo-yo, you know, a down and back. Frank Camas needs to find a little bit of pace, though, and I think the maneuverability, we're seeing the maneuverability and the instability maybe showing itself again for the French.
45 secondes avant la bande de riz.
C'est à nouveau de la droite.
You know, Ali, they also have the capability on the water to shorten the course literally as well. They can actually shorten at a gate now that they've gone around essentially a time and a half. They can shorten if they think this race course or the breeze is getting too light or the race course is unfair or they're running out of a time. Remember, the time limit is 25 minutes on these races. They actually can finish the race at any number of these gates. They don't have to reach the boats all the way back in towards the America's Cup Village.
So as you may be able to see from the graphic top left of your screen, the race course has been shortened, as Ken was describing. The final gate approaching.
I think they're going to go, if we're believing our graphic correctly, they might go up and down one more time, but not have that reach all the way into the finish.
Getting up.
We'll try to find out here a little bit more. It's not. I think the 4 of 6, Ali, they're probably going to go up to the top gate one more time and then back downwind. They've only eliminated that reach back in to America's Cup Village right out in front of where we're sitting.
All right. Pump it, Des, pump it. Pump it, Josh. Go, 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 go. Hit it, hit it.
Look at those angles. The angle changes are really incredible. And as the boat accelerates and it pops up its foil, you see them bearing off sometimes 15, 20, even 30 degrees. Dramatic changes.
So that's a really good example of what Joey Newton was explaining to us not that long ago about the need to invest perhaps with an angle of attack which you might not be expecting, but then you bear fruit with the speed that you've subsequently gained.
Invest is a great word, but it's patient investing. You know, yes, there's a fine line of having to put the bow up or down depending on which course, on which leg you're on, but you don't want to do it so dramatically that you're just giving up massive amounts of distance. So it's really, you see the smooth, you see the good guys. The good guys do it really well in a situation like this. It's not easy. This is you can make a case. This is more difficult conditions to sail in than when it's blowing 18 knots. You see the dramatic course change that the French just did after that jibe.
Well, they're a long way off the pace here, and it's looking like a fifth defeat of the qualifiers for Frank Camas and co from what would be 7 races and only 3 left before somebody goes home.
Yeah, not just a long way off, but they jibed a little early. I'm not even sure they're going to make this gate. They have to get down around this mark, and I'm not so sure they're going to be able to do it.
Making heavy weather of this, the French.
See, they have to go through this gate right there, and they're not going to make it. So they did a jibe. They're going to have to do one more jibe. And as we know, these maneuvers are the pain and torture of a maneuver on a catamaran on a light air day like today is, yeah, it's not pretty.
Well, when you compare the two from a couple of days back when the wind speeds were really good, it's almost excruciating to watch them because you feel everybody on board is just itching for that kind of pace and
blowing
just
and
not getting
breathing.
it.
Come on, please.
Please do.
They're only going 6-9. They're literally zigzagging back and forth right now, not getting a whole lot closer to the gate itself. So got to be patient on a day like today. Again, it's very easy to say as we sit up here in the confines of our beautiful glass little booth, but not going perfect for Frank Camas and his French team right now.
Well, this has got to be enormously demoralizing apart from anything else. Everything slowing almost to a halt.
I think they're going to jibe one more time to go through the gate. Trying to look on our instruments. We still have about 7 or 8 knots of breeze out there right now. I think up at the top of the course that the Japanese are going 20, 21 knots while these guys are going 3. So you don't have to be a brain surgeon, Ali, to realize that this is not a perfect scenario for the French.
I think at various different points those French might want to start getting out and pushing. It's very, very tough. And in the meantime, the Japanese are cruising away to victory. Tough race conditions, but they've handled them very, very well indeed. Consummate, really.
Yeah, as you would think from a Barker-led team with really good tools. You know, it's no secret that Oracle and Japan have almost identical platforms. Their foil technology, their wing trim technology, and their technique. You know, we keep talking to different people about speed, but the technique part of it is as important.
45%, please.
So the Japanese all but there.
Yeah, they have one more leg to go. They're probably gonna come across here, jibe maybe a couple times, and right on in through that gate. This is where the finish line is going to be. There won't be that reach into the finish, and as the French struggle well down, almost a leg behind right now. This is barring any sort of disaster for the Japanese. This is looking pretty comfortable at this stage. Let me go back to Joey Newton on the water. Technique, probably, Joey, in this type of condition is as or maybe even more important than when the breeze is on and you're just kind of hurtling around the racetrack.
That's exactly right, Ken. I mean, what we're seeing here is a talented team with a good platform, good foils that have spent a lot of time training on the water. And the difference between these two boats is basically technique and how they're being sailed. Japan have been here for probably 2 years practicing on the water, and the French have just had a lot less time. And the difference is what you see. There's a leg of difference in just how they're sailing the boats.
Ominous signs for the French, and the Japanese just beginning to flex their muscles. They need this point. They need it badly. They're taking on the defenders in the third race of the day here this afternoon. So a heavy workload, but a chance for them to claw their way up this table and off the bottom. We know for a fact that one of the Japanese or the French will leapfrog Sweden at the end of the day.
And as they jibe one last time into that final gate, we believe this is the finish line. And they will not be doing that reach into the finish, and there it is, the checkered flag, so to speak.
Not quite the blast finish that we've been used to seeing down the runway here on the Great Sound, but nevertheless, terrific accomplishment in testing conditions for the Japanese. A clever, canny, patient race. Very slick operation from Dean Barker. Reaping the benefits of time here on the water in Bermuda. And another race win notched for SoftBank Team Japan.
an interesting byproduct of the fact that Oracle and Japan use very similar parts and pieces to their boat, very similar platforms, is the fact that other teams will be really looking at this race closely and trying to figure out how they may go against Oracle Team USA, because the platforms are almost identical. You can really learn something. A lot of the teams have said they watch Japan almost as closely as they watch Oracle Team USA with regard to the challengers getting to the finals against the defender, and really should be able to judge how well Oracle's going in different conditions based off of the Japanese results.
Similarly, the British and the Kiwis up next will have had a keen eye on proceedings out there in this first race, just recognizing the pitfalls, working out all those various different bits of the race they have to get right, and that notion of patience that you were talking about, Ken.
Just a little bit of a puff, and these guys look okay, but like Joey was saying before, like we were talking about, the technique of sailing these boats, it's just time on the water. Like anything we've ever done in sailing, any of us, whether you're sailing an Optimist or an AC 50-footer, it's time on the water. There's nothing that can take the place of time on the water, and let's face it, Groupama has had way less time on the water than all of the other teams.
So let's have a word with Dean Barker, the helmsman of SoftBank Team Japan. Dean, you've got another win in the bag, 3 now for the regatta as a whole. Testing conditions out there today, patience critical?
You could say that, yeah. It's definitely testing. Yeah, it wasn't quite what we were expecting when we left the dock this morning, but we've got to deal with what we've got out here. So it's yeah, the guys did a fantastic job getting the boat around the course in good shape, and nice to get away with a win, because these are the days where it's easy to have a few go a bit topsy-turvy.
Dean, we've been talking a lot about technique and how having a couple of years on the water obviously does not hurt you guys. We see you running around the front of the wing, for example, in the middle of tacks and sometimes in jibes. Just give us an idea of how much practice goes into these light air days, how hard it is to sail these boats in these light air days, even compared to when it's a little easier maybe and you can just pop up in the foils, piece of cake.
It's actually, I think these conditions are probably the hardest that you have to contend with these boats, because you're going from station sailing to choosing when to foil, when not to foil, and it's yeah, the kinetics and body movement and stuff is obviously key for all the guys to be able to sail the boat well around the course. So it's yeah, there's no sort of set plays. There's a fair bit of freestyling going on. It's never good when I'm going around the front of the wing, for sure, but yeah, and it's just it's the challenging conditions we face.
In all the practice racing that you've done against all the other teams, have you felt comfortable in this breeze? Because let's face it, as June comes in, it doesn't exactly roar in like a lion. This is when the breeze tends to drop a little bit. This has to be at least somewhat of a good sign that you guys are this quick in the light stuff. Have you been good against all the teams when you've been practicing?
Well, we're definitely aware that we've got to be able to race well in all conditions. Bermuda's variable, and it's one of the nice things about racing here is that it's not one-dimensional. But we know on a day like today is typical sort of breeze strength we can expect here as sort of June progresses, and you've got to be able to race well in all of it. So it's adapting to the conditions and dealing with what you've got. But the gains and losses in this stuff are massive if you're a little bit off the game, and from the practice racing we've done here, it's yeah, you learn some pretty hard lessons at times.
Dean, many thanks for your time. We really appreciate it, and congratulations on your 3rd victory here in Bermuda.
Yeah, cheers guys, thank you.
So the Japanese edging ahead of the Swedes and the French on their 2 points in the overall standings, and Frank Camas and crew still going.
Still going up in the foils. They live and learn. You got to learn. So not going to figure out how to do this any better unless you make mistakes. Making the mistakes is often the best form of learning, and these guys will have plenty to talk about tonight. They still got one more jive into the finish line. They will have certainly plenty to talk about with their coaching staff and video and statistics and all the numbers coming off the boat. And you know what? They'll be better, not just tomorrow, but they'll hopefully be better in the next race.
So one last maneuver for Frank Camasso and Groupama Team France. It's not particularly pretty, but at this point, frankly, it matters not.
Le rappel. C'est bon. Allez, ça vole.
So a very tricky race comes to a close for the French, and frankly the result something of a body blow for them as the qualifiers draw towards a conclusion.